Welcome to the BLTNT podcast. I'm your host, Matt Loria, serving up real stories of business, life, technology, and transformations. You'll hear from interesting people about big changes from career shifts to life-altering decisions and the innovations that help make it all happen. It's about sharing those light bulb moments, pivot points, challenges overcome, and the journeys that inspire us to think differently. If you're on the lookout for insights to propel you forward, stories that resonate, or just a bit of inspiration on your next BLTNT move, you're in the right place. Let's dig in. Welcome to another episode of the BLTNT podcast, where we're talking about business, life, technology, and transformations. Sitting here with my guest, Kevin Schnieders, world famous in the circles that I swing in, and semi-famous everywhere else.
There you go. Yeah, you need a bigger circle, I think.
I only know 6 people, and they all know you, so that's great. So I'm not going to read his whole bio here to you because it's more than I can read. Kevin's the CEO and president of EDSI, where they are providing workforce development services and training and consulting. And he's been doing this for quite some time.
Mm-hmm.
He's got a master's degree. He was used to be on the news.
Yeah, started out in television.
Yeah. So great guy. He's but seriously, in the circles that I'm in, Kevin is a widely known person who has done a fantastic job of running a very much culture-based organization.
Yeah.
And you've grown it from, the company I know has grown from 8 to about 900 people.
Yeah.
I don't remember how many were there when you first started.
9.
9? Okay.
Yeah.
So you've been on the ride, and how long since you've been at the helm?
I bought it 18 years ago.
Oh, yeah, just 18
years
years
ago. To get that final promotion, I needed to make the purchase.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. So we've got a ton of stuff to talk about. I think for business leaders all over, they're going to pick up something here from your experiences and what you've done such a great job doing at EDSI.
Yeah, thanks, Matt.
Yeah, you're welcome. So going back 18 years, 8 employees, unlimited runway. What was the vision at the time, and how has it morphed over these years?
Yeah, so I was really lucky. I got to work with my dad for 13 years. And so when I started, kind of completely accidentally, we had a new line of business, and that was to help people who were unemployed. And so he had his company, had been running it since 1979, was really successful in customized training and technical training. And I was at Channel 7 at the time. I had been trained as an educator, so I was going to teach high school English and just kind of figuring it out like a lot of 22-year-olds.
Mm-hmm.
And he and I had a very fortunate conversation on a walk on a beach on a vacation together. And he told me about a project where he was going to place some dislocated steel workers in Pittsburgh, and he wasn't going to do it. And I talked him into doing it and said, I'll help you with the workbooks. And I did that 30 years ago and walked into his office the day after they opened that office and said, hey, I'd love to help you grow this and figure it out together. And that was the start of the journey. And we did that for 13 years, from 8 employees, 9 employees to about 200. When he said he never wanted a company with 200 people. That was the transition when I purchased the company.
There are some complexities that arise.
It's just different, right? It's been different every step of the way, for sure.
How have you found it yourself to be able to be scalable? Because, I mean, you are such a relationship person. How do you make sure that you're touching the people and knowing the business and staying in at the level that I know you'd want to be involved at?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. I mean, I love people, right? That's what I have to offer is that connection to other human beings. In fact, when I told my dad that I wanted to do this full time, his first thing that he said was, I know why. You love people and you want to help people change their lives. You want to help them find work and have a rewarding career. And he was exactly right. And so to your point, when you go from 8 people in one room and 3 of them are related to you, to having 900 people now across 80 locations all across the Midwest and East Coast, that's where the frustration came in for me at one point. And we had probably between 300 and 400 employees at the time, and I wasn't connected with them, and I wasn't feeling like I knew their stories. And so I went to my administrative assistant, Jennifer, and I said, hey, what can we do about this, right? I have an idea. If you'll partner with me on this journey, I'd like to talk to everybody in the company at least once a year. And so that's when we started what we called the town hall meetings. And I meet with everybody still at 900 employees once a year for a half an hour in groups of 10 or less. And The really cool part is, if you'll indulge me with this part of the story, is that Jennifer takes these meetings with me, and I will not allow people to talk about work. I'm just connecting with them. And in those meetings, we're talking to them about their lives and homes that they're trying to purchase and kids that will be born and grandchildren. And I'm taking notes to ask them follow-up questions within the conversation, but she's taking better notes to follow up with them throughout the year. And so we put those notes into my calendar, and I emailed a couple people this morning about a couple different issues in their life. One had moved into a new home. Another one was pursuing something outside of work that was really interesting to her. And so I was following up with them, and tonight I'll follow up with them again when they email me back. So
That's
that
great.
part has helped me stay connected to all of our 900 people.
I would imagine that, and maybe not you, because I just know how you do connect with people, but for the average person, so let's say, I know you had mentioned that you don't take, or that they know that you're taking notes. They know that
Yeah.
Jennifer's taking notes,
Yeah.
but that's not contrived in any way,
No,
right? I mean,
no.
it's obviously there's no way that you could remember everything without some cheat codes.
Right.
But how would you maybe explain that? For somebody who maybe doesn't have your softer skills, right?
Yeah.
Not every CEO has your EQ.
Yeah. Well, why would you want to do that, right, Matt? Is another question that I get sometimes. Why do you spend so much time in this space? And to take part of your question, we do have baseball cards. So I have baseball cards for every individual in the company, and they're electronic. But when I look at it, it has the person's face, and then it has all the stories that they've told me over the 7 or 8 years that we've been doing this practice. So if I'm going to meet with that person or go to an office, I go through my baseball cards to remind myself about all their stories. And then, you think about this. I didn't used to have any outreach from people directly. So people talk about doing skip meetings, and it's like, that's great. But I mean, literally, I'll get emails every single day from people in the company, good, bad, and indifferent, saying, hey, I need to talk to you about this, or I want to make you aware of this. So to have that level of connection across the organization, I'm not trying to influence in that way, but they know that I'm here, and they know that I care more about them, the person, than them, the employee. And so that helps them be involved in the culture. A lot of things that we do are just a little bit different, I think. When I wrote the values for the company 18 years ago after I made the purchase, I said that they were going to be show up, smile, and support. And so we had a very organized process, but after 3 days of that process, we weren't getting anywhere. And so I was driving into the office that third day feeling like we had failed. And I had invited these people in to be in this part of this process with me and hadn't gotten anywhere. And it just hit me on the way down Southfield Road between 7 and 8 Mile that show up, smile, and support would be our values. And that has carried us, so far. And so every time I talk to, some of our 900 people, they say that's why they joined the company, or that's why they care about the company. So when you think about culture, not only do you have to make it simple, in my opinion, the alliteration helps, but then each week I'm sending out videos about what those words mean to us and how we live those quick videos now, but what those words mean and how we live them. And that helps.
I feel like culture is the thing that allows us to scale, and has allowed you to scale too, because the company does take on the personification of its leader,
Yeah,
right?
for
And
sure.
unless you can let people really know how you believe, right?
Yeah.
How you act maybe when they can't see you. That's to me what culture is. Culture is that expansion of that. And it sounds like, I mean, if knowing you, the 3 S's are pretty much you.
Yeah, it's great. Thanks for bringing that up, Matt, because I went home after we were doing this for a while and said to my wife, hey, I'd love to have family values too. And then I had a speaker through a professional group, and, he was talking about a little bit about that. And, I went out to dinner with him when he was back in town, and his kids were older. And I said, what would you do differently? Our kids are young. What would you do differently? And he said, I'd take the values at work and I'd take them home.
Mm.
And so I thought that was really powerful. And I took him up on that challenge and said to my wife, hey, why don't we keep show up, smile, support, but then write our own descriptions, what we call our daily ways and how we live. And so we did that. And that laminated card sits right next to our kitchen table. And so
Oh, I
on
love
Monday
it.
night, every Monday night, I'd say to the girls, Lauren and Riley, I'd say, hey, this week we're working on like find your happy, or you be you, or I keep my commitments. And so when they didn't want to go to some volunteer effort that I was taking them to or something, when they were, teenagers, I'd say, hey, we show up. Like we show up for other people, we smile and we support them. And so they would tell you that. And I went to the point of getting them gratitude coins. So we have gratitude coins at EDSI that are part of our culture, where if somebody tells me someone is doing something great, I send them a handwritten card with 2 gratitude coins. And one, it has our logo on one side and Show Up Smile Support on the other. And it's a heavy weighted coin.
Mm-hmm.
And so they get these 2 coins in the mail. And the second one is for them to give to someone else that helps them be great. And sometimes they give them to their 3-year-old son or their the person on their team. And so I took those home, and I just gave one to Riley the other day. And she had a tennis lesson with someone else, and she was a little bit, well, the skill level wasn't the same. And
Mm-hmm.
Riley was the higher skilled player. But it was such a great experience for both players. And so the other player said she didn't want to have the group lesson anymore. But the coach said, hey, Riley never made her feel that way. And she said that,
Oh, wow.
And so I took this coin into Riley's bedroom and I said, hey, that's significant, right? At your age, to be able to do that for another person your age.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just want to make sure you know this. And she put it on the pile of coins that she has that when we catch her doing something right. And so that reinforces the Show Up Smile support that we live at home too.
We never catch our boys doing anything. No, I'm just kidding. Kidding, boys. Kidding.
Yeah.
We've caught you doing something right before. So you're a husband and
Yep.
a father of 2 girls. So tell us a little bit about your wife and
Oh my gosh.
a little bit more about the girls here, real quick, since we're on the topic of
Yeah,
family.
yeah. I'll watch for your eyes to glaze over and mine to tear up here. I was lucky enough to marry my best friend, and as cheesy as anyone might think that sounds, it's absolutely true. Wendy and I knew each other for probably about 5 years before we started dating, and she is my best friend. She's my favorite person on the planet, and we were lucky enough to have 2 beautiful girls that Lauren and Riley are 19, just turned 19 and just about to turn 16.
Oh, wow.
And Laura's down at the Savannah College of Art and Design. Super proud of her for having the confidence to go that far away. And Riley is a 15-year-old sophomore, about to be 16 at Berkeley High School. And that's who I am, right? I mean, when I bought the company, Matt, I said to Wendy, I said, I've been the chief operating officer for probably 5 or 6 years. I thought I was pretty good at what I do. I hope everybody does. And I said, I have no idea if I'm going to be a good CEO or a good business owner. And like any partner, you would want them to say, she said, how can I help you? And I asked her to be my North Star. I said, just be my North Star. I have a 6-month-old daughter. You and I have a 6-month-old daughter at that time. Lauren was 6 months. And a beautiful wife. And the first thing that I have as a responsibility is to be a husband and a father. And I don't want to screw that up. And so if this business screws that up, then I have to make a change. And I will sell the company or hire a CEO, but I won't screw that up. And so it's always been 1 and 1A. I am a husband and a father. And then I also get the great joy of running a business with people that I love. But on the 8th of every month, because Lauren was born on January 8th, I go to Wendy and say, can I go back to work tomorrow? Every month, without fail, I sit down with her on the 8th, and she has to convince me at this point, right, that she believes that I can still go back to work and be the same husband and father that I was before I bought the company. And that's kept me centered on the right priorities and not losing my focus of working too hard or traveling too much or doing things that aren't paramount for me and what's important to me. So, and I get to work with incredibly talented people that allow me the space to be that person and not travel as much and not get involved in things too much.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm very fortunate in the same ways. So
Nice.
that's nice to hear. One of the things I've noticed about you is there's things that you do on a very regular basis. And so I wanted you to talk about that. But before we talk about that, I want to know if you're naturally inclined to be like that, or does Jennifer really make that happen and bring that out in you, or is it a combination?
Yeah, there's certainly, Jennifer and I have great conversations after 18, 19 years together, right? She's the most effective person I've ever worked with. And when you consider the quality of the work plus speed, she is the best person I've ever worked with, right? And so Jen and I have great conversations in that we both would have been successful if we had never met the other person, but we also act as the other person's amplifier. So I always think of myself as an acoustic guitar, and that if Jennifer, we amplify the other person's strengths, right? And so I think that part of it has been so fun. I think to answer your question more directly, Matt, I am naturally inclined to be exactly who I am as a CEO, almost as an extreme. I think that's why it plays as such a different kind of CEO sometimes, because I'm not trying to be a CEO. I'm just trying to be myself. And I figured if it didn't work out, we wouldn't be growing, we wouldn't be making money, and we wouldn't have a great culture. And so I would figure something else out to do for a job, but I had to be this person. And to your point, I am, I wake up every morning and say, I am patient, kind, and curious. And those are the 3 things that I try to be. At one point, it was patient, kind, and generous, right? But then when the girls became teenagers, I became patient, kind, and curious. And so you try to
They
adapt
sucked all
these
the
things.
generosity out of you by that
I
age.
don't know what it was. I was just looking through their eyes,
Yep.
seeing through their eyes, and trying to figure out, okay, how do I meet them where they need to be met? How do I give them what they need from me? I think the consistent thing that I hope people would say about me is that I am always seen through other people's eyes, and that
Mm.
is true in our mission statement at
Mm.
EDSI too. So you made a great point earlier, Matt, that the business is going to be a reflection of the founder or the leader or the people that are in charge there, to be servant leaders, hopefully, but that it's going to be a reflection of what's going on there at the leadership, and hopefully for me, it's seen through other people's eyes.
Great, great. And I think you answered that for me. Is I was looking for what are those compliments of having a great a great assistant that you have,
Yeah.
and how much that really can amplify a person,
Yeah.
right?
It's huge. It's any partnership, right? There's a tremendous amount
Sure.
of trust there. I mean, I'm lucky enough to work with 8 to 9 people really closely. Jennifer's one of them.
Hmm.
And it was funny during the pandemic when I was working from home, Wendy would walk by the office and she would hear me ending one of the business calls and I'd say, all right, love you too. And she's like, who are you talking to? And I'm like, oh, it's Casey or it's Ro. And so that was just commonplace for us. I mean, we genuinely
great.
love the people that we work with and we're lucky enough to work with each other for 29, 25, 24 years, which
Wow.
is pretty special.
So one of the things you had told me, I remember, is that your dad said that you're your mother's son, and is that loving nature? Is that where that came from, or what are some of the attributes that that mom influenced? And I'd really love to know what dad influenced as well.
Yeah, thanks. Gosh, and what a great question, man. I appreciate you asking. He did say that. I jokingly say that he said it so often I look sideways at the mailman. But he said to me when he wanted to leave, which completely shocked me because I loved working with my dad, and I think he loved working with me. But he said, look, there's 200 people in this company, and I never wanted a company with 200 people. And we were just we went to lunch twice a week, and it was one of our lunches. And he looked at me without a pause, and he said, you are your mother's son. And he said, you have the patience and the love of process that I don't have. You have the love of people, the patience, and the process that your mom has. And so I think I definitely got from my mom a love of people. She would always say, I must have "talk to me" written on my forehead because people would just come up and open up to my mom in really meaningful ways. And she was always that place. She is that person for other people even today. With my dad, who unfortunately passed 3 years ago, it would have been real easy for me just to paint by numbers and do exactly what my dad had done.
Mm.
I felt a deep sense of responsibility to stand on his shoulders and do more.
Mm.
He had to start at A, right? And because I got to be with him, not only as a business leader, but as a son and watch him as a father, and as a husband, right? I mean, he gave me such a great role model to follow. I felt like I started at M, working my way to Z. And so I always told myself quietly, I'm going to be a better father than him, and I'm going to be a better husband than him. And when I talked to him about that on one of our trips back from Philadelphia when the plane got canceled, or driving to Pittsburgh, or heck, sharing a hotel room early on, right? I mean, I would say that to him. And he would say, I would expect nothing less, right? I want you to stand on my shoulders and be better than I was. And I expect the same thing from our girls, right? They're getting knowledge and stuff that I want to impart to them, and Wendy imparts to them, that we expect them to have better, bigger, fuller, more meaningful lives of purpose than even we were able to experience,
Sure.
right? Because of that learning.
Well, he really had to. I mean, when you think about the ego, right? He had to really keep his ego in check to be able to say that to you, right?
Yeah.
Because I mean, really, we all want to be great,
Yeah.
but to then say to someone, I mean, obviously he's your dad, so it's apropos, but
Right.
but to say that, it's almost like admitting, okay, I'm not perfect,
Yeah.
and I want you to take it, even just fatherhood, take fatherhood to the next step.
Yeah, you are your mother's son too, right? Like, he knew I was his son, and he knew what I had in him that represented that. But he also, I think we're 1/3, hopefully, if you're lucky enough to have two great parents like I did, you're like one third one, 1/3 the other, and then 1/3 whatever you're experiencing, and coming to contact with great people like you, Matt, and mentors that we have in our lives, like people in our lives that were around. So I think that makes up that other third. But
Yeah.
I was lucky enough to be able to hopefully grab the very best things that represented my mom and my dad, and they certainly were free to share those. They shared those things freely with me.
That's great. Back to the piece from your mom.
Yeah.
I find it interesting that normally the charismatic personality, the high EQ is not always coupled with process.
Yeah,
That's
interesting.
that's more of that. We'll pick on engineers. I pick on engineers all the time. That process orientation, and I mean, I know you love profiles and stuff like that, but that is rare. That's rare that you have that that procedural, and that's what I was kind of picking up on and saying earlier is you really do a great job of the regularity with things, meaning like how often you reach out to people, what you do in certain situations. You have kind of a 1, 2, 3, but it's very natural because you're such an empathetic person on top of it. And I think that's rare.
Yeah.
That you have that connection plus the process. But if you were someone who struggled with that, what might you recommend as some we'll go with the words cheat codes again.
Yeah.
This episode of the BLT&T podcast is sponsored by Auxium, business IT and cybersecurity designed to outsmart chaos. And powered by Juniper Networks. Automate your network with Juniper Networks and the Mist AI platform, the world's first AI-driven wired and wireless network.
It's a great question. Thanks for your kind words, Matt. They mean a lot coming from you. I think there's reminders that I make to myself. There's cheat codes, Matt, that I put into my phone without people thinking that I'm obsessive, right? I try to take things that I'm experiencing. So you and I are part of Vistage, right? It's a professional group, and the speaker will come in. And I think what people in my group or people that have seen me over the years would say, and somebody just said it to me today, is that you take one thing or you take part of that and you build it into the practice, you build it into the company. And so what is it that you can learn from that? And that comes true for me in every book that I read and everything that I'm experiencing, every great person that you get a chance to talk to. For example, I read a book about a guy who had a terrible health diagnosis. He was a business leader like you and me, and he said, he had 6 weeks to live. And so he organized all of the people in his life around his Rolodex and said, hey, I want these people, I'm going to call these people in the first week. And then the second week, I'm going to see these people in person. And then the third week, it's going to be down to just people that I'm related to. And then the last 2 weeks he spent, with his family by his bedside. And I read that book and I'm like, well, why would I wait until I have a terrible health diagnosis? Why don't I organize all the people in my life in zones of relationship? And so I have a file in my phone called the zones of relationship. And in zone 1 of the, my family, the core 4, as I like to call us in Huntington Woods, were excluded from this, Wendy and Lauren and Riley. But everybody else, I went through A in the first day. And I looked at all the A's in my contacts and I put them into zones 1, 2, 3, or 4. B, C. So 26 days later, I had everybody organized. And what was happening, I found in my life, Matt, is because I was trying to live my life for other people. You have to be careful not to go to bed and say, oh, gosh, I did talk to Jackie for an hour today, but I didn't talk to Matt.
Right.
And it's like, it was enough. Like, I just lay my head down now and I say, you're enough. And today was enough. And you did enough, right? Just lay your head down and for that last word, just say enough. Because you did. I'm authentically trying to really hard to do the right things.
Right. If you insult the one person accidentally, you know that in your heart you didn't.
I didn't, and I can try to make amends. No, but it's like, look, it has to be enough for today because you tried really hard, and I'm going to make a lot of mistakes. But so in that zone 1, that's my chief responsibility is to make sure that I look at that every day and say, okay, who in zone 1 needs my help? And if I have time to go to lunch with zone 2, great. If I email twice a year to zone 3, that's enough. And so just being intentional about those things helps me to feel like I'm doing what I need to be doing.
That's great. Man, that's like your own personal CRM system, but again, not contrived. Right?
Constant contact, but yeah.
I think it's great. What do you think are some mistakes that people make? And I'm going to go with the word contrived. I think that is one thing that I always think can happen with this whole kind of cultural piece. What are other mistakes that are made? You had mentioned, not being yourself. So you have to show up. Who you are here is the same person we see in the parking lot.
Yeah.
You're not out here dropping F-bombs at the lady that, walks behind your car or anything like that. You're the same person kind of everywhere you show up. And I've always said to people, especially employees, right, and that are looking to advance is consistency, right?
Yeah.
People have to know what they're going to get every time they encounter you, or at least the majority of times, or at least 90% of you, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you can have a bad day. There's no question, but But if there's volatility, or if you're just not there for them all of a sudden, I know in my previous employment, we had somebody who kind of just wasn't regularly showing up to work.
Yeah.
And it's like, boy, you're great at what you do.
Yeah.
But you're not, I don't know when to expect you. So it doesn't matter how great you are, you have no consistency.
Yeah.
Or people with, explosive nature and things like that. Like, what are some of the mistakes you think people make in, trying to saying, oh man, it's all about culture. They read a book that tells you culture eats everything, and then they try to implement it, and then they fumble. What can you say about that?
Yeah, I love your point about authenticity, Matt. I wish everybody as a leader could just be authentic. And I've spent a lot of time thinking about this because we practice servant leadership at EDSI. And I see other leaders that are successful that don't practice servant leadership. So
Sure.
It's like, hey, so what's the difference? And over the years, I've come up with the clear, consistent, and curious. So very much along your consistency piece, I think the clarity is huge. If you can't explain what the expectations are for any job in 3 main rocks, then you're doing the wrong thing, right? What are the 3 things that this job is about? So you have to be clear, you have to be consistent, and then you have to be intensely curious about how you're getting better each and every day as a leader. You asked too about culture, and I think going back to that consistency with the culture, so I forget where I read it. I wish I could remember because I would credit the person, but take it off the walls and put it in the halls. So take it off the walls and put it in the halls. And that comes from talking about it consistently. Every handwritten note I write is referencing either the EDSI values or show up, smile, support. Thank you for showing up for this person. The 2 videos that I do, one is from a place of describing those words. So we talk about one of our daily ways. I talk with people, not about them. And so I'll say, well, what does that really mean? How do we live that? And that comes up as a cadence every 12 weeks. 12 weeks later, I'll be talking about, I talk with people, not about them. And then, I do a weekly gratitude video just for less than 2 minutes, about hopefully a minute every Thursday. And that goes out in the afternoon. But you're talking about, hey, you all are showing up and you're showing up for other people. So you're consistently mentioning those things. That is helping people to be that consistent person. If that's not authentically you, I mean, our own leadership team laughed at Show Up, Smile, Support when I said it the first time, and I claimed executive privilege and said, well, tough, these are our values. But that's not for everybody, and certainly the way I lead is not for everybody. So if you do it authentically, hopefully it's with kindness and caring and compassion for other people. But however you're doing it, if that fits you, then good on you, and keep doing it that way.
That's great. That's great. You had also told me that that you operate, the company operates on as a B Corp.
Yeah.
Right. And that basically restricting the certain amount of profits that the company essentially retains.
Yeah, we're a for-benefit corporation or a B Corp, which means that you take a pledge that you will not make more than 5% net profit. And every decision you make is about your people at the company, the environment, and the communities that you serve. Patagonia is a great B Corp. There's thousands of them around the world now, and I think more than 75 countries. So that B Corporation in Michigan, we cannot yet incorporate officially as a B Corp. It's still like C Corp or an S Corp, but we are a certified B Corp and have been for about 6 years now, and it's a pretty rigorous process. I mean, we've been ISO 9000 certified for 30 years now, I think 29 years. And we know that process, and we know the B Corp process, and it's significant. It's outside auditing. It's people taking it very seriously, and we're proud to be a part of that community for benefit of the communities we serve and the people we
was there ever a lack of buy-in or challenge? Like, I guess there was probably not necessarily a lack of buy-in, but if there was, please explain that. But more so, what are the challenges if anybody wants to take on that cross, basically?
Yeah, you said it before, Matt, right? Is it authentic to you? Is this really what you're about? When we did the initial application, we had the highest score in the history of B Corp for an initial applicant.
Really?
So, yeah, it was top 5% in the world as a score, and it was the highest for the first-time applicant. I say that with, obviously, in my voice, with a tremendous amount of pride.
Absolutely, you should.
For who EDSI, I think one of my things that I like to say consistently is that there really isn't a lot of good or bad in the world. There's just fit. So what fits you? And so if you can find your fit, don't focus on what's good or bad. When the girls were little, we would say, don't yuck on someone else's yum, right? But it's like, hey, let them do that. That's fine. What fits you? And so I think if B Corp fits you, you'll know that. It obviously fit us very well. And we had found a group of people that thought about business the way we think about business. So I celebrate that. If somebody else is trying to make as much profit as they possibly can, and then, give as much of that away as they possibly can, then I celebrate that, for them too.
Sure.
I do think that business for the power of good, business for the communities that we serve has been very powerful for us too.
I like that lens though. When you talk about it's not good or bad, it's just fit. A lot easier to. I just got done reading the book, The Let Them Theory.
Yeah, yeah.
Have you read that one?
Yeah, Mel Robbins.
Yeah,
For sure.
yeah. And boy, when you can let them, it's so funny. All her stuff is so simple, right?
I love it.
When you can let them just be them,
Yep.
right, and do the you do you type of thing. Now,
Yeah.
Obviously, there's a lot more layers to that than just just let them, especially with your kids and safety and stuff like that.
It's a great time.
But the whole of it's not good or bad. It's just fit, right? I love that lens that you look through. That is something that probably allows you to walk the world without a lot of cynicism.
Without a lot of cynicism, without a lot of judgment, right? We're all going to look, we all say things. In fact, Mel says in her book, right? You're going to say negative things about the people in your immediate family, about
Sure.
the people that you love. It doesn't mean that you don't love them. We are all prone to make judgments. We're all prone to say negative things, but this definitely helps me. And I've been thinking this way for a long, long time. It's like, look, just because this works for me, I'm thrilled, and I'm thrilled that I found it. I would celebrate anything that works for somebody else that's not hurting the environment, not hurting someone else, not hurting.
Sure.
I celebrate that, and I celebrate that you found that. And
Do you remember what triggered that, or what inspired it? I know one of the things it was for me.
Yeah, please.
It was Larry Short. Larry Short, mentor of both of ours.
Yeah,
It was a direct mentor to you as more of an adjunct to me. Would say it's not good or bad, it just is.
Yeah,
about someone's personality or their especially personality profile. I think it was that when we were working with the DISC tool or the AccuX tool, and he's like, this isn't good or bad, it just is.
Right.
And all of a sudden I was like, oh my gosh, not everybody is bad because they don't think like me.
Right.
And that was an interesting aha moment.
Yeah, I didn't mean to interject because I loved Larry.
Please, no.
Yeah, Larry was a great mentor in my life. I was fortunate enough to be with him, for 15 years, and what a great individual, and had a huge impact on my leadership and my business acumen, and a great friend in my life. And one of the things he would say, Matt, to your point, he would say, "We're all totally unique, just like everybody else." And so he had a lot of sayings like that I reflect on. That is not one, ironically, that I remember as specifically as you would recall, which I think is one of Larry's gifts, is that he really made an impact for each person individually, and
Sure.
took the time to try to connect with them like that. And I loved Larry. I learned so much from him.
Well, let's keep on the Larry track here for a second. This is good stuff. Do you remember what his thing was about the hats? He would say which hat when somebody would come.
Yeah.
Can you explain that?
Yeah. I mean, when I would talk to Larry, right? I mean, I talk a lot, so being succinct is not a strength of mine. And he was patient enough with me to listen to those stories. I would tell.
Welcome to the club.
But I tell people too, Matt, it's probably why you and I get along so well, but I tell people that, look, for the first 5 years that I knew Larry, I think I met him when he was like 75 and I was 35. And those first 5 years we'd go to lunch and I'd say, Larry, I've got this challenge. And he'd listen and he'd do most of the talking at that point, right? And I was trained when I went through my master's program. I got a certificate as a professional coach. And I've been coaching people pro bono, 2 people at a time for 8 years now. So I know a little bit about coaching, a lot more than I did when I met Larry. And so you're trained as a coach, at least as a professional coach, to never offer suggestions. You're asking questions and you're pulling that out of the person. And so what Larry was doing very early on was less coaching and more mentoring. And we'd go to his GMC Blazer and he'd open up these like file system that he had in the back trunk and he'd pull out the exact right thing that I needed at that moment. And it helped me for the first 5 years as a CEO because I didn't know what I was doing like everybody else, right? And so he helped me in that way. The next 5 years, he was patient enough to pull that out of me and listen to my stories. And I was then making 100% of the decisions that he was guiding me. And for the last 5 years, he was at Fox Run and I was visiting him as a friend. And so it was this beautiful arc of a relationship where he was exactly what I needed at that time. And I remember when I met Larry and my dad said, this is great, right? Because you've been benchmarking yourself for me. and EDSI almost exclusively. And it's great for you to get out more and meet these other people. And then beyond Larry, I'm my group, and we're getting together later this month for the first time in a long time. All of the people that were so great in my life, starting with Don Clayton, right? He was kind of the godfather of our group, but Ed Brooks and Rick Fulton and Russ Waldo and Jerry Seizert and these folks that we're going to get together. And
fantastic.
I was 35, they were 55 or something like that. And they were open enough with me, to Tim Fagan and others, right, to go through their mistakes and their learnings every month. And that's really the power of Vistage, right, that you and I both have benefited from, where you have the coaching and you have the group and you're participating in that way and you're giving of yourself to other people. Now I'm the old guy helping the younger people, right? 20 years, 30 years later. But yeah, I've been very, very fortunate, right? There's nothing that has come into my life that is not blessed with some really good fortune, some great timing, and that's a big part of it. Don Clayton and I used to argue because he thought like preparation created opportunity in this stuff. And I'm like, no, I've seen people work really hard and not have the success that other people have. So I said, I think to me, it's always been like one big part customer service, one big part hard work and getting up early and working hard. And then the other one is just good fortune and serendipity and good luck. It's always been at play in my life and in my professional life.
That's great. Back to the hats. So did Larry ever say the hats to you? Like he said,
absolutely.
What hat do you need me to have on today? Basically.
Thanks.
So he would ask about that.
He would. What do you need me? Which hat do you need me to put on?
And what were the hats?
Am I your friend? Am I your mentor? Am I your coach? Am I your, was he just listening? Right. And so that was brilliant. Which ones do you remember, Matt, beyond one?
I remember all of them. I don't remember what the definitions were, but I do remember, but with my president here, she was a coach prior to most recent job prior to here.
Yeah.
And, she says, do I need to be heard, held, or hugged?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, at the end of a long day, she calls me and she's got all the weight of this organization, on her shoulders. I'll say, which one is this?
It's
because then you know, right, to shut up and listen, or start rolling your sleeves up and offering some assistance and some other options that maybe they're not thinking. And, when someone's mature enough to be thinking like that, they can acknowledge, hey, I'm in an emotional state.
Right.
I know that I'm not thinking clear enough. It's time, Kevin, for you to give me some options, because I know I may be out of them, or I'm just out of my own mind right now so much that I can't think that,
What a great way to meet people where they need to be met too, right? And to clarify that, Matt, to me, I'll say to Wendy, as my partner, I'll say, do you need my head or my heart? Like, you're telling me this right now. Do you need my head or do you need my heart? And oftentimes she'll say both, or she'll say, I just need you to listen. And so that's just the hard part of it, right? I'm just going to give her a hug and not say anything. But if we're really trying to figure something out, then for me, thank God for the fine people at Northwestern University for helping me to learn in this way. But they really helped me in that, especially the year of practical study, to understand that I say the worst question is better than the best statement.
100%.
And so if I can ask another question, and often when I'm doing that, I realize how foolish the statement would have been, because I don't understand. None of us can the way that person does. And somebody said to me at one point, Matt, or I read it in a book, that they said, you're the only one that has your memories. Everyone else just has a story about you. And I'm like, so put your memories to work in a way that serves you well. Don't let them hold you captive and keep you from doing something. I thought that was such a beautiful way to think about it. Like, you're the only one that owns your memories. They're just yours. Everyone else just has a story. And so I think for Wendy, if I can ask one more question, right, I can get to a place where I can be more helpful.
I need to take that tip at home. I need to start asking more questions. I probably believe that I do, and then I know I don't.
We can always ask one more. You've helped a lot of people find jobs in your career. I think you said over 100,000 people you guys have per year. Yeah,
per year.
100,000 per year.
Per year.
Yeah,
okay.
Easily.
Is there a story that has come back to you that that somebody said, like, wow, this wouldn't happen without you guys?
I've been hearing a lot lately about the knock. When an employee knocks on your office door and says, got a minute? And you immediately know it's some sort of IT incident. But Oxium IT can help. Whether you're having a problem, need consulting, an upgrade, or a managed IT approach, they focus on preventing cyber attacks and proactive solutions that deliver results. My friend Matt Loria and everyone at Oxium are ready to help before or after you get the knock. Visit Oxium.com and let Oxium IT help you outsmart chaos.
Well, I think of the retirees now, right? Because I'm old, Matt. So there's people that came off of like full-time public assistants that have retired from their jobs. The first gentleman that I met was a guy named Albert.
Okay.
He was a steel worker, worked in the mines first, and then mines and then mills in Pittsburgh.
Okay.
And both my parents grew up in Pittsburgh, and it's a place that's very near and dear to me. We would travel there 6 to 12 times a year growing up as a kid.
Oh, wow.
Because my dad promised my mom they'd move back, and they never did. So that was our penance, as we moved back and forth between Pittsburgh and Detroit. Anyway, I meet Albert the first day I go into our new site that we just opened, and I'm just dropping off the workbooks at this point. I don't intend to stay.
Okay.
And Albert was literally afraid to turn on the computer because he had never used one before. And so as a 22-year-old, I was just helping Albert and spending the day with him. And he had been laid off from the mills in Pittsburgh, and he'd been out of work for 3 years plus, and no one was working with him. And so one of our job developers, who was awesome at the time, was my first cousin, David. And David took him to a recycling shop. And he ended up retiring from that recycling place because it was a transferable skill that he knew the metals, he knew the parts. And Albert did a great job there for, I think, 15 years. We've had, at one point when we went from 9 to 900, 30% of our hiring came from our programs. So the people that we were trying to help go from unemployment to work came directly to EDSI, and Debbie and all the people that have retired from there after 25 plus years with EDSI, where they went from long-term unemployment to really tough situations where they had just been laid off and they had never been laid off before. And they find EDSI, and that's, I think, the worst thing that can happen to you other than a terrible health diagnosis is to just one day you're without a job.
Sure.
And you're worried about yourself and your family. And so those people are the stories that I think of when I lay my head down at night. It's like all the people that have come with us on this journey helped thousands of other people then retire.
Yeah,
like
right.
that's the coolest thing. How about the other people that come off of long-term public assistance and leave EDSI for something better?
Yeah.
Like, that's awesome too, right? Like, so yeah, that part of it's really, I remember Cheryl Gadsden was the first person that I hired in Philadelphia, and she had 15 certifications. Can you believe that? 15 certifications.
I don't even think I have one.
She had never worked.
I am
day
a
in her life,
licensed Michigan fisherman, though.
Congratulations.
Yes.
Yeah. So for me, Matt, though, we looked at a system that it was training people, but not placing them. And so here we are, we're training people. We believe in training. But at some point, you got to get a job, right?
Sure.
And so Cheryl we were her first job. It wasn't like there was anything wrong with Cheryl. No one had ever asked her to do that before. They had asked her to go to the next certification.
Keep going to train.
Everything from lead-based paint abatement to certified nursing assistant. And I'll never forget Cheryl's face when we gave her that first opportunity. And then 2 years later, she was off to a better job.
So let me back up just a little bit. So you're saying that this person was unemployed.
Yeah.
Got put into, found her way into training assistant type of programs.
Yeah.
That then the program would say, okay, maybe you should become this. She'd get
they
the
left her
cert
on her own to get her own job, right? So they get the training, but then it was like, well, good luck to you.
So now she has the cert, but it's
Right.
but there's the door, and good luck, little eagle, fly.
It was essentially what EDSI saw in 1994.
Okay.
My dad was helping the director of public welfare, a woman named Claire Morrison. God rest her soul. She was awesome. Claire was really, really powerful, and she was tired of giving people checks. She said, I don't want to give these women checks. I want to give these women jobs and opportunities. Yeah. So here's my dad as a person who's helping, Apple Computer and LA Unified School District and all these, really big clients do customized training. And he's working with Claire to try to help her understand what the employers are looking for her people who are trying to go essentially from welfare to work. And finally, after 6 months of this, Claire goes to lunch with my dad and she goes, look, this isn't working out. Like, you're not able to take our people and make this connection. Why don't you just do it yourself? And my dad goes, well, what are you talking about? And she goes, well, I'll walk you over to the department right now and get you a contract. Like, that's not hard. We'll get you a contract to do this work.
Really?
It'll be for a year. You'll have, X amount of people. And that was the contract that he described to me on the beach that Claire talked to him about over lunch.
And he said he didn't want to take it.
He didn't want to do it. because he's like, I don't want to open an office in Pittsburgh. I've been
Right.
doing this for a long time. He was successful in what he did. They were, he was having a good time.
So he was training. That was what he was doing. He was training and not necessarily placing.
Absolutely not.
And then that was the big break.
Yeah, and so think about that too, Matt. I know you were lucky enough to work with your dad. A lot of times when you go into business with your dad or your mom, you're the second generation. They've been doing that for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't have a dad that was wagging his finger at me saying, you'll never tell me about making pies. Right? It was like, we had no idea what we were doing. Like neither one of us that first day had any idea what we were doing. When we went to Philadelphia, I remember we went to lunch after the first day with the clients, the customer, and we're still in Philadelphia 30 years later, helping the city. But I said, we went up and we had lunch and he's looking out at the city we're very high up at this restaurant. And he goes, what are we doing? And I go, what do you mean? And he goes, but this is like the 6th largest city in the country. Like, what are we doing? And I said, Dad, well, they asked us to be here. Like, we must have a purpose because I was 23. I didn't know any better, right? And so the two of us put it together. And I'll never forget that first contract in Philadelphia. We were supposed to place 225 people. And after 4 months, we had placed 2. And I remember vividly standing in front of that group of 12 employees and saying, here's where we are, and here's where we need to be, and here's how we're going to get there. We're going to get there about 10 placements a week. And if we get 9 next week, we're going to get 12 the next week. And I'll never forget, we got 223 placements. We missed it by 2.
Wow.
But we still work with the city of Philadelphia today, doing great work with amazing people. And really, the people that do our work every day genuinely are transforming people's lives. And our purpose at EDSI is to put people in front of a better mirror. And so often we're meeting people that have had a terrible hardship or a series of terrible traumas in their lives. They don't believe that they're ready for that job. They don't believe that they're worthy of that big job. And we get about 4 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks to help them believe that they are ready for that job. And they go out there and compete then. And we expose them to 8 or 10 opportunities. And our job developers do a great job, but they have to believe that. They have to believe that job they're worthy of that job and they're right for that job.
My wife and I had a little experience with some folks through a church group that it's called McRest.
Okay.
Where the folks who are currently displaced, meaning homeless, basically they live at a different church each for about 1 or 2 weeks. I can't remember what the time frame is. And so we used to bring in, because I was in the computer recycling world prior to this with my brother, was we would bring in 20 or 30 computers, set them up at tables, and then help them write resumes. Yeah. And it was just amazing, right? Because it was all between the ears that how we were helping. It was, sure. I mean, people had the skills, some had substance abuse and other problems, but the cascading effect of somebody who gets in that bad situation and it's like told no enough times in a row, and all of a sudden they don't feel worthy in any way. Yep. And then, whether they're living in their car, or they ultimately lose their house or whatever it is, they're just at the bottom, the bottom. And so hard to pull out of that.
And when you set up those computers and you provided that help for those people, Matt, I mean, as we said earlier, you're giving them your head and your heart. And you're showing them that someone does believe in them. Sure. And I always tell our folks that we're meeting people at the time that they need to meet us the most. And that takes a tremendous amount of responsibility to really own that and to help them and to say that you can help them make that transition, because I really do feel like, other than a terrible health diagnosis, it's the hardest thing to face is that fear of unemployment.
So you talked about Vistage, but you also had mentioned to me that you have participated in a group called Small Giants and then the Tugboat Institute. And you and I had talked quite considerably about the Tugboat Institute, but teach us here a little bit about what each of these organizations has taught you. I know, and again, you've spoken about Vistage, so you don't have to do that again unless you want to, if there's more to add to that. But Small Giants and Tugboat, talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, and I would add to the Center for Positive Organizations out of U of M, U of M's Ross School of Business.
Oh, okay, yeah.
The CPO does an awesome job. I'm very affiliative, right? So I do love people, and I love being connected to those people. Each one of them in different ways, Matt, has been so influential on me as a leader personally, and also the organization. At one point, for each of the organizations, I will go back and clip all the things that we've implemented that I've learned there. Small Giants is great because it really is just as it says. It was built upon a book by Bo Burlingham called Small Giants, and then Paul Spiegelman built this community. It's awesome that these are people that commit to having a smaller business that does not just chase growth for the sake of growth, right? You might have a business that grows, but they're really committed to doing what they do well, consistently, and they're okay if it's smaller and not as well known as some other companies. Image One is one here locally.
Oh,
right?
we just did. Rob Dubay and I did a
Rob's
podcast.
great. I love Rob.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
we just met up. I went. Jackie and I took the show on the road.
That's awesome.
And
that's
did a show with Rob.
He's a friend and a beautiful human.
Great dude.
I love Rob. Yeah. So they're a great example, and he's very instrumental within the Small Giants community. Within Tugboat's cool because it's all about private ownership and maintaining that commitment to private ownership and what that means, right? And so the oldest organization within Tugboat is on their 9th generation.
Wow.
Out of Boston.
Wow.
Their first, they had a trade agreement with Paul Revere, and their first customer was Benjamin Franklin. So they've been around for a while.
Wow.
But that's the kind of business that you meet within Tugboat. Is these are not always family businesses, but usually generational, privately held companies that believe in that, and they believe that you can have a huge impact on communities because it is privately held, and there's a real agility to that. And they also have, their 7 Ps of the principles of paced growth and things that are really significant. And they have a great platform from which they recruit and then have like-minded people that come together and talk about the businesses that way. And I've been so impressed with them. I've been in Tugboat probably 2 or 3 years now, 2.5 years. And the first meeting that you go to, people will open up to you and just be so genuine and authentic and sincere. There's no air about it. You never hear somebody at a Tugboat meeting talk about how big their business is, and I'm talking the biggest business within Tugboat is more than 26 billion.
Wow.
And the smallest is 5 million.
Wow.
But the only thing they have in common is they're all privately held. And so they come together, and like I said, you never hear them. You would never know that from who you're speaking with or who you're having dinner with. And so Tugboat's been a really cool community. And then CPO, I get any chance I get to hang out with my friends at CPO at the Center for Positive Organizations, I would take that chance because I just love what they do. And, Jane Dutton, one of the founders that I'm, probably closest to of the group that founded it initially, Jane just talks about flourishing at work and that individual having just this amazing experience to be a magnifier for other people and other humans. And so I was lucky enough to find something that fit me and what I was trying to do and talking about servant leadership and positive business. And they do it a lot better. There's 350 scholars around the world that are part of that community. And there's probably about 50 companies that are in the consortium, all different sizes that just really look at positive organizational scholarship and try to implement well.
Great. I'll have to share a couple of smile sticks with them. I don't know if you remember my smile stick invention.
Sure.
Yeah, drove over.
I love that. Yeah, I love that. That's perfect.
Make sure that you explain, like you did with Tugboat, that Small Giants is not necessarily just small, small as in, $5 million or less organizations, because I think that that's something that throws people off based on the name. It's these groups of decidedly privately held and smaller organizations. So they're not going to private equity.
Yep.
They're not chasing growth for growth's sake, right? They want a healthy organization that's going to continue to thrive and exist in a legacy fashion.
Yep.
But they're just not chasing like if you look in my industry is there's a very specific formula that the majority of people will follow. Get to this level of EBITDA, you sell, take that group together, you sell to private equity, private equity clumps it together, you get to this level of EBITDA, you then bundle up, sell for another higher multiple, that same group.
3 to 5 years later.
Yep.
Right? Yeah.
And boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously people create some tremendous personal wealth in that. And so, good on them for those endeavors. What I don't care for in that model is what's left in the wake of it.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's growing for growth's sake. It's not growing for true reason. And I don't know if you've come across a private equity organization. In fact, this week I've got a private equity guy coming in to do an episode with us. So I really want to understand that, from him. Are there socially responsible private equity firms.
Yeah.
I don't know.
There
has to be.
For sure. I'm blanking on the name of one. I did talk to one at one point that was a nonprofit, and they had a very, very large fund. And so they were trying to organize around social enterprise like EDSI. And so, yeah, they're out there for sure. And back to our earlier point, right, too, Matt, and when you talk to this gentleman that comes in for your podcast, I mean, that fits what he wants to do. And that fits the people that sell to private equity. And that fits the, not good or bad to me. I'm not here to judge what they're doing.
It's what fits.
Right? It fits them and good for them. It's never going to be a part of what I do, you know, at EDSI and with the future of our business. And so maybe it'll keep me from getting more phone calls. It's not saying
he's not for sale, folks. He's not for sale.
Not that it's bad. It just doesn't fit us. It doesn't fit EDSI.
Well, I was telling you, there was a gentleman that came in and talked to us, Chris Risey, and he comes up with basically, I can't remember what the name of his talk is, but it's basically there's a third way or something like that. And it's about raising debt to be able to fund the next level of internal purchaser. To purchase your organization so that you can keep it private, so that it can stay as a legacy organization. I thought that was pretty interesting. So we'll include a link to Chris's stuff in your podcast here. But we're gonna have a lot of links. I love this word. You're affiliative.
Affiliative, Hey, people tell me I'm full of it, Matt. They must be talking about one of these links or something we're talking about.
I think everybody, they talk nice about you in front of your face.
As far as I know.
But as far as you know. A couple of things, you know, I mean, I think that intentionality is such a big word these days, but obviously with your processes that you follow, you know, one of the things you told me was that and I didn't even know this, is that you and my brother talked once a week for a certain number of years.
Tuesday morning at 7:30 for, I think, 4 years. You know, Mike can tell you the exact timeline maybe because he's got a bigger brain than mine. But every Tuesday morning. And that was a joy for me. It really was. I mean, it was a coaching relationship. That's what Mike was looking for at that time, to work on great things and do great work. And he was. And I look back at that with great fondness and joy. And you know how I feel about your brother, but that was just, Mike was one of the pro bono people that I said, look, I'm not going to do this professionally. You know, when I graduated 2016 or whatever it was now, and I had this certificate on top of it, which again was a total accident. I was not going into that degree program saying, hey, I want to get my certificate to be a professional coach. Terry called me, and she was kind of our den mother in the program, and I got to, because I love people and I love Terry. She's awesome. She is since retired, but she called me into her office and she said, hey, we're starting this new coaching program. And I said, well, congratulations, Terry. That's very exciting. She said, no, you'd be perfect for it. And I said, well, that's great. But I also promised my wife I wouldn't raise my hand for one more thing.
Sure.
She said, no, you just have to do like a year of coursework or this. And I said, that sounds like one more thing. And she said, no, you wouldn't. You're already taking all the courses. You just have to do this, and you wouldn't have to come to Evanston, you know, in February. And I'm like, wait, now you've got my attention. I don't have to. So yeah, I ended up in it by accident, and then it was life changing. It genuinely was transformational, to the point, Matt, where I was leaving Evanston. We used to have to go on campus for 3 days each time for each course on an intensive, which was aptly named. And so I'm leaving an intensive, and you know, Chicago traffic. I'm stuck in traffic.
Yeah, that's intensive.
Oh my gosh! And so my wife calls, and I'm talking to Wendy. And I look at the clock. I forget what it was. It was something like 18 minutes. And I had done nothing but just ask questions because I was coming off of this experience of the last 3 days.
Oh, wow.
And so she paused for a moment, and I didn't know what was wrong. And she said, this coaching thing's been really good for you.
That's
and
fantastic.
I'm like, was I a big jerk before this, right? And she's like, no, you've always been a great husband. This is like next level in terms of your listening.
That's great.
And asking questions. And so it really opened up my mind to the idea that it's like, I was probably making too many suggestions before. I was trying to solve problems that weren't mine to solve.
Sure.
And I was just listening and asking questions. So it genuinely transformed my life at work, and how I led and at home and how I could be a good partner. And so that I owe that all to Terry, just calling me into her office when I was walking by and saying, we think you would be perfect for this.
That's awesome.
And knowing me well enough to know that too.
What I think is interesting about that too, so your wife seeing that new side of you here, that there was not an accusation of like, what are you, a cop? Because as you know, and I'm sure you've seen this before, because I've definitely seen it, is when people try to become a follower of the Socratic method. They come off as a rapid fire question asking,
Yeah.
almost baiting as well. And so, what's a tip or two that you can give from the inside secret book of the coaches that teaches people to truly to make sure that they're coming off the right way as they're asking those questions and not rapid fire, and also not leading either. I mean, 'cause that's got to be a really big challenge, especially when you're the senior guy and you kind of know where this train's going.
For sure.
And so you're trying to guide the person away from it.
For sure. Yeah. Sometimes I'll joke with my wife when she's interrogating the girls. I'll say, leading the witness. So yeah, you can't act like that. To me, just answering your question is open-ended. The more open-ended the question can be, the better, because as you get specific, you start to lead the witness.
Sure.
You start to already know the answer, and you're leading them to your point, Matt, where you want them to go. That's not a good question. We joke sometimes when people are asking questions that simply because your voice goes up in inflection doesn't mean it's a question. You're making statements that are just really, it's like, no, that's not a question. So the more open-ended it can be, that's how we train at EDSI. What did my wife ask me? What did Wendy say when I bought the company and said I was lost? How can I help you? That's a great question.
Yeah.
Right. How can I help you for leaders is a great question. So I think those are really helpful. I don't go into any meeting that I have with a lot of things on the agenda. I try to go in. I have a process that I call a third. And so the first third will only be about them as a human being, and I don't talk about work. And different people have different levels of patience. Some people I work with want to go all 30 minutes and not just 10 on that. And that's fine too sometimes. Other people want to go 3 minutes. And so I read the room and I'm paying attention. And so that first third, though, in my mind is about them, the human being. How are your kids? What's going on? Because that's who they came to work as today. And so I want to know that as a human being who loves people. I also need to know that as a leader who cares about our company and the performance that they have. The second third is what's the most important thing that we need to talk about today. So you and I have 40 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes. What's the most important thing that we need to talk about today? And you make sure that you pay homage to what is their focus. And then that last third is, what are we both committing to doing now? What can I do for you, if anything? Who can I connect you with? What do you need to be doing? And that's how every conversation is organized in my mind, in a third. And so that keeps me from going in there with some kind of an agenda to say, oh, I need this person to do this. And the people that I work with are very different human beings too. So some of them are super competitive and I will challenge them with those questions. Are you sure that this is something that you can do? Like that, right? That gets that person fired up at 10 out of 10. Another person cares deeply about humans like I do. And it's like, are you sure that's what's best for the people that you're serving? It just depends on who you're talking to, but try to make it as much of an open-ended question so that gets them talking. And if I had come in with 5 or 10 or 20 preset questions, like you've done a great job today, Matt, you have questions, you're also listening, right? So you're asking different questions than you had on your sheet because you're paying attention.
Sure.
That's what a great leader does within a business meeting is you're saying, okay, I understand, but this is really taking a pivot. I need to pay attention to that.
I like how you break things into these little chunks, whether it's the third, or the patience, compassion. I can't remember them all right now, but that's what I did when I started the podcast was I named it BLT&T because I knew that if I didn't come with any notes at all or didn't know the person at all, I could talk about business. I could talk about life, technology, of course, interests me and transformations is my favorite part, right? Is where's pivot points? Where's things that you've changed about yourself and, or pulled yourself up by the bootstraps or whatever. And
one of your many strengths, right, Matt, is curiosity. I mean, it comes across immediately when you meet you, when you have a chance to have a conversation with you, right? You have a tremendous curiosity.
I used to tell my teachers I'm just practicing curiosity. That's why I didn't study. I never want to know what's coming next.
No, but look how far it's taken you too, right? One of your many
C's get degrees. That's for sure. But thank you very much for that that compliment. What questions might you have for me?
Oh my gosh. What motivated you to start this in the first place? I mean, was it that curiosity?
Well, it was more of a sharing. So for people who watch this podcast, this will get annoying to them because I'm the chief repeating officer.
Oh, yeah, good,
right?
Good.
But I was at lunch one day. Every time I go out, every time I talk to somebody, especially somebody net new, I always think I'm going to go to this. I'm going to figure out 2 people that I can introduce this person to. And then everything always falls into place from there. Because if I go in with that lens, it means I have to listen enough to figure out who would be a neat connection to make for that person. But I also know that I'm not afraid to ask for a favor from somebody too. So I want to make sure that I'm thinking about, what came up interesting out of this conversation. I can ask for a favor. What I would do with that is I would typically connect people with one or two people, right? Outside of those, outside of that lunch or breakfast meeting. And so one day I was sitting at the Detroit Athletic Club, and like one of those kind of like, I just felt totally blessed. I was like, this guy is so different than me. I mean, it wasn't, the guy I'm talking to is so different than me, all these really neat life experiences. And I'm thinking, okay, so I'm going to tell my wife about this, and I'm going to try to introduce him to one other person. And those were the two, like my two to-goes from that lunch. Right. And I just said, man, it would be neat if I could scale this somehow and like tell 10 people.
Yeah.
And so I thought, well, maybe I'll start to like send a note out to my Vistage group every week after I have a cool meeting and say, here's somebody I met. This is something cool that I learned about them. And then I said, well, why don't I just do a podcast? It's the platform's already built out. That would be a great way for me to share, and then that person can share, and then maybe our two networks, something good comes from that. Yeah. And so that was really all it was just that desire to connect, to connect people. And I said, I have no idea how to make money at this. So right now this is fully funded by Oxium and Juniper Networks.
I love that.
But yeah, it's
look at what you've done with it though, Matt, right? I mean, this isn't just a part-time,
no, we're dropping one a week, and
this is amazing, right? Yeah. It's a great setup, and I really have a tremendous amount of admiration for you.
Oh,
because when you get interested in something and that curiosity is sparked, you take it to a really cool level, right? With really professional people doing really professional things.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah. And it's something that I enjoy sticking to, and we can do it remote. We've kind of found all the little workarounds for my own eccentricities. So it works well. But that was the genesis behind it.
I have another question for you. I mean, what are you looking forward to outside of work? What's exciting to you right now outside of work?
Boy, what's right now? We're going to a lot of basketball games for the kids. So that's been exciting. We're trying to help them in their sports endeavors. They're 11 and the old ones are they're past athletic age, but 11 and 13 for the younger ones.
Okay.
And so they're playing basketball. They're big soccer guys, and
love it.
We ski a lot, as you probably know. So we make a pilgrimage up north pretty much every weekend. So we're on the road a lot.
What a great family activity.
It's awesome.
Right? Yeah, I'm jealous on that front. How are they as basketball players? They might be listening.
They're pretty good. They probably should keep going to practice a little bit more. But one of our boys our youngest boy was on an undefeated soccer team. So that was so they're definitely athletes. Both boys are total athletes.
They get that from you, Matt?
They do not. They're adopted, so they do not get that from me or from my wife is very much an athlete. I'm a skier, so that's my only athletic and workout. But
which brings up another question: who's a better skier, you or Mike?
I'll give it to him.
Really?
Yeah.
He tells people he's the best skier on the mountain.
He does. He does, and
comes up more than once.
Yes, it comes up all the time.
Good.
Yeah, he's got a couple of friends that as soon as you say hi, they're like, "Tell your brother I'm the best skier on the mountain." We already know. Thank you.
That's awesome.
So no, good stuff.
Good.
So, and he's training his little boy to be a fantastic skier too. So that's
he's racing even, right? I heard.
I don't think he's racing. He's jumping. Okay. I know that. Okay, so I get a lot of videos of him jumping. So
very fun.
Yeah. But something else for you though is any books or podcasts or anything right now that are kind of shaping your thinking and or validating some of your thinking that maybe you'd want to share with other people too.
Yeah, there's a couple of them. I am a big time audiobooks guys, right? Mm-hmm. So I probably get through about 50 audiobooks a year. Same. And I find time to read 1 or 2 books a year. So I'm much more of an audiobook guy, and I learned that I retain 90% of that. So there's one that was probably older. I didn't check the date it was published, but it's called Predictable Success by Les McKowen. It just did a great job. I've heard a lot of people talk about the life cycles of a business, what he did for me that I appreciated was that he said you can come back from that. So a lot of the life cycles were like, once you get over that hump and you're now a declining business,
Okay.
you have to start a new line of business, or you have to start a new name in your business. Or he said you can actually do practical things that'll get you back in there.
What's it called?
Predictable success. That would be at the height of his 7 stages. And then as you go over that predictable success, you can get into another section that's not so great.
Interesting.
The other one that I read recently I loved was David Brooks, How to Know a Person,
Okay.
which a lot of the stuff that really resonates with me, Matt, is not traditional business book stuff. That's why Les was so
Sure.
good. But it's a lot of the stuff that like the Heath brothers do, right? They do a phenomenal job.
I'm not familiar with them.
So Dan and Chip Heath, a couple of professors, last I checked, one was at Stanford and one was at Duke, but Dan and Chip were writing books together. Now they're doing their own stuff, side projects too, but Upstream is a great one. Switch is another great one. They, Dan or Chip, I'd have to check. One of the Heath brothers has a new one coming out, just came out in January called Reset. Their books I would highly recommend for any business person or business owner. They do a phenomenal job. Just check out the Heath brothers. Big fans of theirs. And then, like I said, David Brooks, a lot of stuff is positive psychology. It's about a lot about the human being and psychology, as you might imagine. So those are 2 that come to mind too, though, for How to Know a Person was really good.
Okay. Good.
So.
One of my favorite podcasts right now is one called Fixable.
Yeah,
Have you heard of that?
Yeah,
With Francis Fry and Ann
Yep.
Morris. They're fantastic. And they break down a business problem and deal with it in about 25 minutes, and just fantastic.
It's good for us to remember too, right? Like
It is,
that
yeah.
all things are
Things,
likely
yeah.
fixable.
Typically, yes. Unless you don't go scorched earth, and then you can fix it. So what's next for EDSI, and then the follow up to that is going to be what's next for you personally.
Yeah, thanks. I think those 2 things are pretty related. If you go to the homepage of our website, we have our painted picture, which is our 3-year vision. So that'll be updated again next year in 2026. That's about a 4-minute video that tells the world what our vision is for EDSI. So look for that next year, I suppose, to come out. But, for what we're doing, I asked our leadership team to do their own painted pictures. So they all did a 3-year vision for me on their individual careers, and then a 10-year vision, which the way our friend Larry Short trained me how to do this, you write a letter to someone that you love and date that letter 3 years into the future. So they were all asked by me to date some letters that were January 1st, 2028, and what they would be doing at EDSI. And it's fascinating. I wish I would have done it earlier in my career.
I'm going to steal those.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And then the 10-year was even, interesting in a different way. And so they dated that same letter. It was even interesting, Matt, to see who they wrote the letters to, right?
Sure.
I'd always written mine to my dad because of our experience together. And even posthumously now I write them to my dad and just say, hey, you'd be really proud of what's going on at EDSI. But then Larry would pull words out of that for me, and he and I would start. We're both visual people and artists, and not vocation, but so we would draw pictures. And then we had a chance to listen to a guy through Vistage named Cameron Harold,
Sure.
who was the COO of 1-800-GOT-JUNK, wrote a great book called Double Double, doubling your revenues and profit within 3 years. And so Cameron challenged us in a speaking engagement to put that on the homepage of our website, our vision, and I did. And he called me. He was out in San Francisco, and he was speaking to a group, and someone had seen EDSI's vision on our website, and he called it a painted picture. And so anyway, he called me up. And
He's in Dubai now. You know that?
Oh, is he really?
Yeah. He's
Yeah.
living in Dubai now.
Oh my gosh. It was so funny. He called me up and he left a voicemail. And he said, Kevin, I just want to congratulate you. This is Cameron Harold. You won't believe what this will do for your business. I'm really proud of you for doing that. No need to call me back, but congratulations.
Oh, that's great.
So me being me, I
Call them back.
Right? It's like, no, seriously. Don't,
I saw don't call me back.
Just one.
I blocked the caller ID for a reason.
You won't be calling me again. So no, Cameron was influential in calling it a painted picture and putting it on the homepage of the website. Larry was super influential in terms of what's that process. And helping me to see that you can write a letter and some powerful things come out of that. The first time I did it for Larry about 16 years ago now, at least, I thought it was a bunch of hooey. I really did. And I just did it because I loved Larry. And then like 3 years after that, I put it in a drawer and it was just the letter. And 3 years after that, someone called me from the state of Michigan and they were asking for some help on some legislation that they wanted some perspective on. And I had put in that letter that I hoped that we began to shape the work that we were doing, not just
Oh, wow.
subcontractors to
Yeah,
this
yeah,
work
yeah.
and be more influential in how the work was structured. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that actually worked out. And so then I looked at the rest of the letter and I'm like, oh, a lot of this stuff actually came to fruition. And so I've done that now on a 3-year cadence. And our team, our marketing director, Casey, is genius. And Adam helps me with the video stuff. And yeah, it's really fun. And so we'll do that again next year. That's a long, long, long answer to say that's what's next for EDSI is that we're going to be doing our work really, really well. And each one of our leaders is going to be doing exactly what they want to do in the way that they want to do it, which is going to be like jet fuel for what they do as a leadership team. And I would think with somewhere in the next in the very near future, we will identify another CEO, another chief servant leader. I would like to spend 3 to 5 years with that person.
Okay.
I was so lucky, Matt, to spend 13 years with my dad. Every lunch, every road trip was learning, right? And so I want to give that to someone else where they have a 3-year period of just kind of hanging out with me, going to the meetings with me. Our customers will then be comfortable with them. All the people, more importantly, in our company will be comfortable with them. And I hope to make it a non-event. There's a Larry Short for it. Make it a non-event.
And how old will you be then if you retire at the time that you're thinking?
So I'm 53 on March 7th. Shop now. Avoid the lines. 53 here in a little bit. And then I'll be like 56 then when the new CEO would take over, 56, 57.
So you're looking now to find that person? And then 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, this will be, I would certainly within 2025, we will identify that person.
Okay.
Then that person and I will work together for 3 to 5 years.
And you're looking internally and externally?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I would love it to be internally because that's where all of our great successes come from, but it could be externally.
Okay.
But yeah, we've got super talented people, right? So I don't think we'll have any trouble finding an internal person. Then hopefully 3 to 5 years later, it'll be a non-event for that person to be the chief servant leader at EDSI. And then I'd love to.
Do you want a party though? Do you want to have a party?
I do not.
You don't want the party?
I want it to
They're going to give you a party.
I want it to feel like Friday afternoon and I just walk out the door. That would be more my speed and my pace, hopefully. My dad and I, it was funny when I bought the company, we both planned surprise parties for the other person simultaneously and invited all the same people.
Oh, that's funny.
So they did a good job of keeping the secret, but I was celebrating him and his career, and he was celebrating me for buying the company. We even called the same tent and catering company. It's for the same day.
That's funny.
So they
charge you twice?
They did not. They were nice and they were patient with us. So you were nice enough to ask for me. I would love to coach. Not necessarily individuals. I will continue to do that pro bono, I hope, with 2 people that will put up with me, but teams. I knew Dave Llewellyn is one of my close friends. And Davey Lou was my first boss when I was 19 and an intern at Channel 7, and he could not have been more kind to me. And so flash forward 35 years later, we're still close friends. And I love Dave. I always tell Dave he's one of my 10 favorite people, right? And so, he and I, as we look at things now, he's recently retired. And so I told Dave, I'm like, you got to make this look really good, right? Because I'm hoping to retire someday myself. But I remember when I got a job offer to coach high school English to teach high school English at Okemos High School. And I took it for a week, which I still feel terribly about to this day. I can still feel the grace that the principal gave me over the phone when I declined it after a week and said, I got to pursue this television thing a little bit longer. Awful. But what Dave was telling me at that time, and he did it with enough grace that I believed him. He said, look, you could be a great, sportscaster, which is what I wanted to be at the time. He said, you could be a great sportscaster. I've been with enough interns to know that you could do this job. And he'll listen to this at some point, Matt, and he won't have any memory of this conversation.
Never said
But to me, at 22 years old, it was so influential. He said, you can do this. It doesn't mean you have to do this. And he said, take the job at Okemos, right? So then one of my other mentors, Mike Turner, was my college golf coach at Albion College. I love Mike. And so I'm going to have breakfast or lunch with him on Monday. I can't wait. He's one of my favorite people. He said, you'd be a great coach and a great teacher. My mother, who knows me as well as anybody, you'd be a great coach and a great teacher. So a lot of times my dad and I would watch, my mom was a cheerleader for the Pittsburgh Steelers in 1963 and 1964. I'm very proud of my mom. And I love the Pittsburgh Steelers to this day. And my dad and I, from 7 years old until the day he died, watched every Steelers game together. And so it's a big part of our lives together. And we'd watch a Steelers game and my dad would say, I took you away from what you were supposed to be doing. He goes, "You're 30 seconds ahead of these guys." And I go, "Dad, no one was going to let me do color commentary. Like, I didn't play football." And so he's like, "No, but you know so much about sports and you love this." I'm like, "No. I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing." But when he would say that to me, Matt, I would think the only thing I do think that I could have done and been really, really happy would have been to coach and teach at Okemos High School. And so in the back of my mind, I know in my heart of hearts, I am a coach and a teacher.
Okay.
And so when I'm done doing this job as a chief servant leader, which I know exactly, it could have been any year up until this point, because I would have fired myself based upon a certain criteria. But it'll be hopefully when I retire. And when I retire from this job, it'll be coaching and teaching within EDSI if they will have me. That would be my dream, is to look at teams that are struggling or teams that are new and coach them up. I would love to do that. So
That's awesome.
Hopefully they'll let me do that. We'll see.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Great stuff, man.
Hey, great. Thanks for asking.
You're an inspiration.
Well, no, get out of here. It's great to be your friend. Thank you for asking me to do this. Thanks for being the person that you are in the community and in the world, because you're doing a lot of great positive things that influence other people. And
well, I appreciate that very much.
So thanks.
Appreciate that. Well, thanks for doing this.
Appreciate it.
We'll see you soon.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.